Howdy, Dennis Bradford here. Let's think some about being, feeling, and doing better. What's the root of all addictions? Imagine someone ingesting a sufficient quantity of a psychoactive drug for the first time. Could be alcohol, marijuana, cocaine, heroin, LSD, or anything similar. Also, please imagine that first experience freed that person from thoughts for the first time in his or her life. How liberating! Similarly, imagine someone who had a serious meditation practice for many years suddenly experiencing a breakthrough, kensho, samadi, for the first time. How joyous! Similarly, imagine a sexually submissive person experiencing subspace for the first time and coming down slowly in a lover's arms. How wonderful! Similarly, imagine someone's having a delicious near-death experience that is life-changing. Terrific! There's no point in multiplying examples. You may well be able to supply your own. Such important value-changing experiences can come from aesthetic experiences of great music or art, from love, from religion, and so on. To make the point using ordinary language, the high comes from exposure to a level of consciousness that is above one's normal or customary level. Should we think of the drug or the meditation or the sexual discipline or whatever as being addictive? If so, we might be tempted to try to ban them so as to avoid addiction. That's wrong-headed. It always fails. What's addictive is experiencing a higher state of consciousness for the first time. It's what those experiences have in common. The point is simple. When we experience a higher state of consciousness, we want, desire, crave more of it. If we lived our lives in the higher state of consciousness, there'd be no need for the drugs, meditation, sexual discipline, or whatever. It's higher states of consciousness that are addictive. I'm using addiction and similar words in the sense of clinical addiction. Someone has an addiction when there's continued dependence despite serious consequences. In other words, the addicted person cannot discontinue the behavior unaided. What happens is that the experience filters out enough ordinary consciousness so that a higher state of consciousness is experienced. That higher state is experienced as fulfilling, joyous, and peaceful. Why? One way to put it is that it's natural for us to seek our highest self, our essential nature, our true self. A momentary exposure to our true self may be sufficient to change one's whole orientation to life. The critical question is, who am I? Any conceptual answer to that question is, at best, misleading. It's very important to understand why. All judgments are partial. Recall that judgments always involve the application of concepts, which are principles of separation. As previously discussed, when I think, that's an oak tree, I've singled it out and separated it from all other forms in my visual field. That's one of many possible perspectives about that form. In fact, if judgments weren't partial, they'd be useless for navigating everyday life. This also means, though, that no single judgment expresses the whole truth. That's logically impossible. This is ultimately why we philosophers should always be ready to question any thought or belief. They are all, at best, perspectival. Only fools attach fanatically to them. The wise never do. So, for example, if you were to answer the critically important personal identity question with the answer that, I am this body, you'd have, at best, identified only part of the truth. It's true that you have a body. That's a partial truth about you. However, it'd be a mistake to identify exclusively with your body, which is what the judgment I am this body means. If you really happen to believe that you are a body, what you're doing, presumably unintentionally, is creating suffering for yourself. What? Any Limiting self-definition like that creates fear. Why? It creates vulnerability. Why? If you believe that you are nothing but a body, you also believe that the end of your body is the end of you. So you're saddling yourself with the fear of death. You're carrying around a heaviness that's unnecessary, misleading, and counterproductive. Might the fear of death underlie all other fears? Living with the fear of death is an important way of suffering. People who do that are attached to the partial truth about their being physical. Only the wise experience life without fear. My suggestion is that living well requires detachment. If so, what's the takeaway? When you believe something, attach to it lightly. Always be ready to examine your own beliefs and detach from them as soon as they are found wanting. Doing that's a way of living. It's living an examined life. It's the kind of life that all philosophers lead. The wise not only free themselves from emotional suffering, they free themselves from all suffering. How that is possible should, I hope, become clearer in subsequent videos. Let's eliminate emotional distress.